Coalition of the Willing urges Kremlin to quickly agree to or reject ceasefire. Senior NATO general says Ukraine is not doomed to lose war, and Trump's inner circle urges him not to call Putin until he promises to halt attacks. The latest news next. On April 2nd and 3rd, Trump's special envoy met with Putin's negotiator in Washington. Now the US is awaiting his report to the Kremlin chief before taking further steps toward resolving the war in Ukraine, informs Bloomberg. The meeting between Steve Witkoff and Kirill Dmitriev took place a few days after US President Donald Trump expressed his disappointment with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This was due to the lack of progress in negotiations on a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, according to a person familiar with the course of the negotiations, the US is waiting for Dmitriev to report back to Putin before the parties take any further steps. Bloomberg also cited a Russian official after the negotiations.
Steve has been really focused on solutions. I think there is an understanding for how we can move to finalize the agreement, and there have been lots of discussion in that realm.
Media outlets also report that US officials are increasingly frustrated with the slow progress of negotiations from Moscow's side. What seemed like a breakthrough last week on a partial truce in the Black Sea quickly evaporated after Russian officials stated that the issue depended on lifting sanctions. In particular, this statement contradicts the US declaration outlining the parameters of the deal. Additionally, Russia and Ukraine have exchanged accusations of failing to comply with the terms of the partial ceasefire, including striking energy facilities. US President Donald Trump's entourage advises against calling Russian President Vladimir Putin until he commits to fully halting fire in Ukraine, reports NBC News. According to two officials from the administration, no conversation between Trump and Putin is planned for now. The officials warned that the president could suddenly decide he wants to talk to the Kremlin terrorist. However, they told him that a phone call would not be the best idea unless Putin had informed the White House that he agreed to a full ceasefire in the Russian-Ukrainian war. Earlier, Trump told NBC News that he planned to speak with the Kremlin terrorist this week. He also mentioned that he was very angry at Putin for saying that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky should effectively resign. Additionally, NBC reports that Putin's envoy Kirill Dmitriev met with White House officials and Republican lawmakers last night. However, it is unclear whether Trump attended the meeting. Dmitriev also met with Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Markwayne Mullin at the request of the US president. This also took place yesterday at the White House. According to three US officials, the group discussed the conditions for ending the war in Ukraine and Putin's demands for a ceasefire. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot has stated during a joint press conference with his UK counterpart David Lammy that the coalition of the Willing, which supports Ukraine, is preparing options to monitor a ceasefire but is currently demanding a clear response from Moscow to the proposal, even if it is a rejection. Reported by European Pravda. Quote, Russia owes an answer to the United States. It has to be yes, it has to be no, it has to be a quick answer. The French foreign minister expressed confidence that Russia would not agree to the ceasefire, stating that Ukrainians want peace, while Putin thinks differently. Barrot believes that Putin is proving this with strikes on energy infrastructure and by announcing last week the conscription of 160,000 soldiers, the largest call-up in the past 40 years. He added that Vladimir Putin clearly shows no intention of agreeing to a ceasefire or negotiations. Barrot also stressed that Ukraine has made a major concession by agreeing to the US proposal for an unconditional ceasefire, while Russia is violating the arrangement by continuing its strikes on energy infrastructure, continuing its war crimes, and has yet to give a final answer on its readiness for a ceasefire. He confirmed that military leaders from several countries in the coalition of the Willing would arrive in Ukraine on Friday, the 4th of April, to discuss security guarantees.
This means building a strong Ukrainian army that is going to be the first layer of any guaranteed peace in a lasting sense. This is the reason why our army chiefs will be in Kyiv today.
He also said that France and the UK remain in contact with the US, putting together scenarios for the monitoring of a ceasefire. US General Christopher Cavoli, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Europe, has stated that Ukraine is not doomed to defeat in the war. Reported by European Pravda with reference to Cavoli at a hearing of the US Senate Committee on Armed Services. Quote from Cavoli in response to a question of whether Ukraine is destined to lose.
No, Senator, thank you for the question because I think it's an important one. There is nothing inevitable in war, and the Ukrainians are in very strong defensive positions right now and are improving weekly their ability to generate force and to reinforce those positions.
Meanwhile, he added that it is hard sitting here right now to envision a major Ukrainian offensive that would clear the Russians out of every square inch of Ukrainian's territory from Russian occupation. But likewise, it's very hard to envision Ukraine collapsing and losing that conflict. I do not think there is an inevitability to a Ukrainian loss, the US general said. Cavoli also agreed that the Ukrainian army has evolved from a Minuteman with a rifle to a really serious modern military force. Ukraine maintains its position that compromises on NATO membership are unacceptable during peace negotiations, reported by Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha in a meeting with journalists in Brussels. The Ukrainian minister said that at the NATO-Ukraine Council meeting, he informed allies that Kyiv remains firm on its NATO aspirations.
There are fundamental things Ukraine will not accept, and one of them is the impossibility of a third country having a veto on our aspiration to become a NATO member.
Sybiha emphasized that NATO membership is not a short-term objective, but Russia's opinion will not be considered. Quote, yes, there is no consensus yet, but that is not due to a veto from another country such as Russia. The minister believes that Ukraine's accession to NATO is essential not only for Ukraine itself, but for the entire region.
The most effective factor in guaranteeing our security and transatlantic security, and these are inseparable, is our NATO membership.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe.